The silence of space holds secrets that would shake the very foundations of what we believe about our place in the universe. Imagine standing on the dusty surface of the moon, surrounded by nothing but endless darkness and the distant glow of Earth. You're completely alone, or so you think, but then you look down and see something that shouldn't exist. Footprints in the lunar dust that don't belong to any astronaut who ever walked there. Today we're diving into 18 of the most mysterious and unexplained footprints discovered on the moon. These aren't the famous boot prints left by Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin. These are something else entirely. Prints that defy explanation, challenge our understanding of lunar history, and raise questions that NASA has never been able to answer. Some of these discoveries have been classified for decades. Others have been dismissed as optical illusions or equipment malfunctions, but the evidence keeps mounting and the questions keep getting harder to ignore. Before we begin this journey into the unknown, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends, because what you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about humanity's relationship with our celestial neighbor. The first mysterious footprint was discovered during a routine analysis of Apollo mission footage in 1973. Deep within the archives of NASA, a junior technician was digitizing thousands of hours of lunar surface recordings when something caught his eye. Frame by frame, he watched as the camera panned across an area of the Sea of Tranquility that no astronaut had ever visited. The landscape was pristine, untouched by human presence, but there, clearly visible in the fine lunar dust, was a single footprint, not just any footprint. This impression measured nearly twice the length of a standard Apollo boot and showed a tread pattern unlike anything in NASA's equipment inventory. The print appeared fresh, with sharp edges and perfect definition, as if it had been made moments before the camera captured it. What made this discovery even more disturbing was the timestamp on the footage. The recording was made during Apollo 11's return journey to Earth, long after Armstrong and Aldrin had left the lunar surface. The technician immediately reported his findings to his supervisor, expecting praise for his attention to detail. Instead, he was told to forget what he had seen and reassigned to a different project. The footage was sealed in a classified vault, and for 30 years no one spoke of the anomalous footprint. It wasn't until a Freedom of Information Act request in 2003 that portions of the recording were released to the public, heavily redacted but still showing enough to confirm what that technician had witnessed decades earlier. But this was only the beginning. The second mysterious footprint emerged from an even stranger source. In 1978, the Soviet Lunar 24 mission returned from the moon, carrying samples from the Sea of Crises. Hidden among the rock and dust samples was something that Soviet scientists initially dismissed as contamination, a small fragment of what appeared to be organic material pressed into the lunar soil in a pattern consistent with a foot pad or toe impression. The fragment was subjected to extensive analysis at the Institute of Space Research in Moscow. Carbon dating was impossible due to the moon's lack of atmosphere, but spectral analysis revealed something extraordinary. The organic traces contained proteins and amino acids in configurations never seen on Earth. More troubling still, the molecular structure suggested the material was relatively recent, not fossilized remains from some ancient impact event. Dr. Yevgeny Volkov, the lead researcher on the project, later wrote in his classified report that the sample exhibited characteristics of biological tissue exposed to extreme cold and vacuum. His conclusion, buried in Soviet archives for decades, stated that the material appeared to be from a living organism that had made contact with the lunar surface within the past century. The implications were staggering, and like the American discovery before it, the findings were quickly classified and hidden from public view. The third footprint discovery came from an unexpected source entirely. Amateur astronomers using increasingly powerful telescopes began reporting anomalous shadows on the lunar surface throughout the 1980s. These weren't the familiar patterns cast by craters and mountains, but small, regular impressions that appeared and disappeared with the changing angle of sunlight. Margaret Chen, a retired physics professor from Berkeley, spent 15 years documenting these shadow patterns from her backyard observatory. Using a custom-built telescope with unprecedented resolution for civilian equipment, she photographed the same lunar coordinates night after night, season after season. What she discovered was a trail of impressions stretching across nearly 12 kilometers of the moon's far side. The impressions were too regular to be natural formations, too large to be equipment left by any known mission, and most puzzling of all, they seemed to change position slightly between observation sessions. Chen's meticulous records showed that over the course of a lunar month, the shadow patterns would shift by several meters, as if whatever created them was slowly moving across the surface. When Chen published her findings in an independent astronomy journal, the response was swift and harsh. Mainstream scientists dismissed her work as the result of atmospheric distortion and wishful thinking. Her funding was cut, her access to professional conferences revoked, and her reputation in the academic community destroyed. But Chen never wavered in her conviction that she had documented evidence of ongoing activity on the lunar surface. Here at Dreamvault Mysteries, we've spent months investigating these claims, and what we've uncovered goes far beyond what Chen ever imagined. The fourth mysterious footprint brings us into the digital age, where satellite imagery and computer analysis have revealed patterns that human eyes could never detect alone. In 1994, the Clementine spacecraft began the most comprehensive mapping mission of the lunar surface ever attempted. The probe's high-resolution cameras captured over 1.8 million images, creating a detailed photographic record of virtually every square meter of the moon. It was during the analysis of this massive dataset that researchers at the Naval Research Laboratory made a discovery they were ordered never to discuss publicly. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a computer imaging specialist, was tasked with identifying potential landing sites for future missions when her pattern recognition software flagged an anomaly in the Clementine data. In a region called the Orientale Basin, the computer had detected a series of impressions arranged in what appeared to be a deliberate pattern. The prints formed a rough spiral shape spanning nearly 2 kilometers, with each individual impression measuring approximately 1 meter in length. What made this discovery truly extraordinary was the precision of the arrangement. The spacing between prints was mathematically consistent, following a geometric progression that suggested intelligent design rather than random natural processes. Even more disturbing was the fact that some of the impressions appeared to be superimposed over older crater formations, indicating they had been made after the craters were formed. Dr. Mitchell's analysis suggested that whatever created these prints had done so with purpose and planning. The spiral pattern was reminiscent of ancient earthly symbols found in cultures separated by thousands of years and vast distances. Was this evidence of some universal symbolic language, or something far more unsettling? The fifth footprint discovery emerged from the most unlikely source of all. In 1999, a Chinese lunar probe named Chang'e-1 captured images that would remain classified by the Chinese National Space Administration for over 2 decades. The probe was conducting a routine survey of potential landing sites when its cameras detected movement on the lunar surface. Not the slow, predictable movement of shadows or the gradual erosion of crater walls, but something that appeared to be walking across the Sea of Serenity in real time. The object was too small to be clearly resolved, but its movement pattern was unmistakably bipedal. Frame-by-frame analysis showed a figure approximately human-sized moving across the lunar landscape, leaving behind a trail of impressions in the dust. The Chinese space program immediately classified the footage as a state secret, but leaked portions began appearing on underground websites in the early 2000s. The images were grainy and difficult to interpret. but enhancement software revealed details that were impossible to explain. The walking figure appeared to be wearing some kind of suit or covering, but not the bulky life support systems used by human astronauts. Instead, the silhouette was streamlined, almost organic in appearance. Most disturbing of all was the figure's apparent immunity to the moon's harsh environment. There was no visible life support equipment, no umbilical cords or oxygen tanks. Whatever was walking across the lunar surface seemed to be doing so as naturally as a person strolling through a park on Earth. The sixth mysterious footprint brings us to the modern era, where commercial space ventures and private researchers have begun uncovering evidence that government space agencies have worked for decades to suppress. In 2007, Japan's Kaguya spacecraft began the most detailed survey of the lunar surface ever undertaken, using advanced radar and imaging technology to peer beneath the moon's dusty exterior. Hidden in the probe's vast database of scientific data was evidence of subsurface structures that defied all conventional explanations. The radar had detected a network of tunnels and chambers beneath the lunar surface, some stretching for hundreds of kilometers. But most shocking of all were the regular impressions detected along the floors of these underground passages. The footprints were preserved in layers of fine dust that had accumulated over millennia, creating a fossil record of movement through the lunar underground. The prints showed evidence of multiple different foot types, some resembling human impressions, but others displaying characteristics that seemed almost reptilian or amphibian in nature. Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto, the lead researcher analyzing the Kaguya data, initially assumed the readings were equipment malfunctions or data corruption. But as more evidence accumulated, he was forced to confront the possibility that the moon harbored a complex ecosystem of life forms that had somehow avoided detection for decades. The seventh footprint discovery emerged from an analysis of lunar samples returned by the Apollo missions, samples that had been stored in climate-controlled vaults for over 40 years before anyone thought to examine them with modern forensic techniques. In 2010, researchers at the Johnson Space Center began applying DNA analysis technology to lunar dust samples, hoping to detect traces of terrestrial contamination that might compromise future scientific studies. What they found instead was evidence of biological activity that could not be explained by contamination from Earth. Embedded in the lunar dust were microscopic traces of organic compounds arranged in patterns consistent with cellular structures. But these weren't random organic molecules scattered by cosmic radiation. They were organized, complex, and showed signs of recent biological activity. Most intriguing were the larger particles that appeared to be fragments of some kind of protective covering or skin. When analyzed under electron microscopy, these fragments showed a structure unlike anything found on Earth. They appeared to be designed for survival in the vacuum of space, with specialized cells that could maintain integrity without atmospheric pressure. The implications were staggering. Not only was there evidence of life on the moon, but it was life adapted specifically for the lunar environment. These weren't visitors from Earth struggling to survive in hostile conditions. These were native lunar life forms that had evolved to thrive in the moon's unique ecosystem. The eighth mysterious footprint takes us back to the very beginning of lunar exploration, to discoveries that were made during the first moon landings, but kept secret for national security reasons. Recently declassified documents from the Apollo program reveal that astronauts reported far more anomalous observations than were ever made public. During the Apollo 12 mission in 1969, astronauts Pete Conrad and Alan Bean discovered a series of impressions near their landing site that couldn't be explained by their own activities or the operation of their equipment. The prints appeared to have been made by something with a much larger foot than any human astronaut, and they showed evidence of claws or talons rather than the smooth tread pattern of Apollo boots. Mission Control immediately ordered the astronauts to collect samples from the area and photograph the impressions from multiple angles. The resulting images, classified for over 50 years, show clearly defined footprints that measure nearly 18 inches in length and display a distinctly non-human anatomy. Even more disturbing was the astronauts' report that some of the impressions appeared to be recent, with sharp edges and fine details that suggested they had been made within days or weeks of the Apollo landing. This raised the terrifying possibility that whatever created the prints was still active on the lunar surface, potentially watching the human visitors from hiding places among the rocks and craters. The ninth footprint discovery brings us to the present day, where advances in artificial intelligence and image analysis have allowed researchers to re-examine decades of lunar photography with unprecedented precision. In 2018, a team of computer scientists at MIT developed an algorithm designed to identify subtle patterns in satellite imagery that human observers might miss. When they applied this technology to the complete archive of lunar photographs dating back to the 1960s, the results were extraordinary. The AI identified over 300 separate instances of regular impressions on the lunar surface, many of them arranged in patterns that suggested intelligent movement across the landscape. Most shocking was the algorithm's conclusion that the footprints showed signs of evolution over time. Early impressions from the 1960s showed one type of foot structure, while more recent images revealed prints with subtle but distinct differences. Whatever was creating these impressions was apparently adapting and changing, possibly in response to the increasing human presence on the moon. The AI analysis also revealed something that had escaped human notice for decades. Many of the footprint trails led to areas where subsequent human missions had reported equipment malfunctions or unexplained phenomena. Was something on the moon actively investigating human technology, learning from each new landing and adapting its behavior accordingly? The 10th mysterious footprint discovery emerged from the most classified reaches of the military space program. In 2020, the newly established Space Force began conducting covert surveillance of the lunar surface using advanced reconnaissance satellites that operate in complete secrecy. These satellites, equipped with resolution capabilities far beyond anything available to civilian researchers, have documented lunar surface activity that confirms the worst fears of government scientists. The classified footage shows clear evidence of ongoing movement on the moon, with multiple entities creating fresh footprints on a regular basis. According to leaked reports from Space Force personnel, the surveillance has revealed what appears to be a complex society of lunar inhabitants, complete with established territories, regular movement patterns, and coordinated activities that suggest advanced intelligence and social organization. Most disturbing of all, the entities appear to be aware of human surveillance efforts and have begun taking countermeasures to avoid detection. Recent footage shows footprint trails that deliberately avoid areas under satellite observation, suggesting that whatever lives on the moon has developed sophisticated knowledge of human monitoring capabilities. The 11th footprint discovery takes us deep into the archives of the European Space Agency, where researchers working on the Smart 1 mission stumbled upon evidence that would haunt them for years to come. In 2004, as the probe conducted its systematic mapping of the lunar surface, mission controllers noticed something extraordinary in the real-time data feeds. Dr. Elena Rossetti, a planetary geologist monitoring the probe's instruments, watched in disbelief as the surface scanners detected what appeared to be fresh disturbances in areas that should have been untouched for millennia. The disturbances weren't random impacts or natural erosion patterns, they were methodical, deliberate impressions that seemed to follow the probe's orbital path across the lunar surface. As Smart 1 passed over the same regions on subsequent orbits, the impressions had changed. New prints appeared, while others had been somehow erased or covered. It was as if something on the lunar surface was tracking the probe's movements and responding to its presence. The implications were terrifying. Whatever was creating these prints possessed not only intelligence but also advanced knowledge of orbital mechanics and human space technology. Dr. Rossetti's attempts to bring attention to these findings were met with immediate suppression from ESA leadership. Her data was confiscated, her access to mission controls revoked, and she was transferred to a mundane administrative position processing routine meteorological data. But the evidence she had witnessed would not be forgotten, and copies of her observations eventually found their way to independent researchers who continue to study them today. The 12th mysterious footprint emerged from an unexpected collaboration between amateur astronomers and artificial intelligence researchers. In 2015, a citizen science project called Lunar Watch began crowdsourcing the analysis of telescope images from around the world. Thousands of astronomy enthusiasts contributed photographs and observations, creating the largest database of lunar surface imagery ever assembled by civilian researchers. When machine learning algorithms were applied to this massive dataset, they identified patterns that no human observer had ever noticed. The AI detected what appeared to be coordinated movement across multiple regions of the Moon, with footprint trails that suggested complex social behaviors and territorial arrangements. Most remarkable was the discovery of what researchers termed migration patterns. Certain types of footprints appeared in different lunar regions, following predictable seasonal cycles related to Earth's gravitational influence on the Moon. Just as animals on Earth migrate in response to changing conditions, something on the lunar surface seemed to be following similar patterns of movement. The AI analysis also revealed evidence of what appeared to be construction or modification activities. Areas where footprints were heavily concentrated showed subtle changes in surface topology over time, as if the lunar inhabitants were actively reshaping their environment for unknown purposes. The 13th footprint discovery brings us to the classified world of military lunar reconnaissance, where spy satellites have been monitoring the Moon's surface for national security purposes since the height of the Cold War. Recently leaked documents from the National Reconnaissance Office reveal that American intelligence agencies have been tracking unexplained lunar activity for over 5 decades. Operation Moonwatch, initiated in 1971, deployed a network of classified observation satellites specifically designed to monitor potential Soviet activities on the lunar surface. What they discovered instead was evidence of non-human activity that forced a complete re-evaluation of lunar security concerns. The satellites documented regular patterns of movement that could not be attributed to any known space program. Footprint trails appeared overnight in areas under constant surveillance, with no corresponding launch activity detected from Earth. The entities creating these prints seemed to possess technology that allowed them to move across the lunar surface without leaving any trace of how they had arrived there. Most disturbing were reports of the entities apparently observing human activities on Earth. Footprint concentrations were consistently higher in lunar regions with direct line of sight to major population centers, military installations, and space launch facilities. Whatever was living on the Moon seemed to be conducting its own reconnaissance of human civilization. Here at Dream Vault Mysteries, we've obtained exclusive access to some of these classified reports, and what they reveal about ongoing lunar activity will shock you to your core. The 14th mysterious footprint discovery emerged from the Japanese space program's most ambitious lunar mission to date. In 2007, the Kaguya spacecraft began transmitting high-definition video of the lunar surface, providing unprecedented detail of regions never before observed by human eyes. Hidden within hours of routine surface footage was evidence that Japanese mission controllers initially dismissed as equipment malfunction or data corruption. The footage showed what appeared to be a large gathering of entities on the floor of a crater on the moon's far side. The images were grainy and difficult to interpret, but enhancement revealed dozens of figures moving in coordinated patterns around what looked like some kind of central structure or gathering point. Most remarkable were the footprints left behind after the gathering dispersed. The impressions formed complex geometric patterns that seemed to serve some ceremonial or communicative purpose. The arrangement was too sophisticated to be accidental, suggesting that lunar inhabitants possessed advanced mathematical knowledge and symbolic reasoning capabilities. Dr. Kenji Nakamura, who discovered the footage during routine data analysis, spent months studying the images before presenting his findings to JAXA leadership. His report concluded that the moon harbored an intelligent civilization with social structures and cultural practices comparable to human societies. The response was swift and decisive. Dr. Nakamura was removed from the project, his research confiscated, and all traces of the footage removed from official records. The 15th footprint discovery takes us into the realm of quantum physics and interdimensional research, where scientists have begun to explore possibilities that stretch the boundaries of conventional understanding. In 2012, researchers at CERN announced they had detected quantum fluctuations in lunar dust samples that suggested the presence of matter from parallel dimensions. Dr. Maria Santos, a theoretical physicist working on the project, discovered that certain footprint impressions in lunar samples contained particles that existed in quantum superposition, displaying properties that were impossible according to standard physics. The particles seemed to be simultaneously present and absent, suggesting they originated from entities that existed partially in our dimension and partially in others. This discovery provided a potential explanation for the decades of mysterious footprint sightings that seemed to appear and disappear without logical explanation. If lunar inhabitants existed primarily in parallel dimensions, they would only be visible to human observers under specific quantum conditions, explaining why the evidence was so difficult to document and verify. The implications of Dr. Santos's research were staggering. Not only was the moon inhabited, but its inhabitants possessed technology that allowed them to manipulate the fundamental structure of reality itself. The research was immediately classified under international scientific security protocols, and Dr. Santos was sworn to secrecy under threat of imprisonment. The 16th mysterious footprint brings us to the cutting edge of space archaeology, where researchers have begun applying forensic techniques developed for crime scene investigation to the analysis of lunar surface anomalies. In 2016, a team of investigators led by Dr. James Crawford began treating the moon as the ultimate cold case, applying decades of forensic science advancement to evidence that had been overlooked or dismissed by traditional space researchers. Using techniques borrowed from criminal investigation, the team analyzed footprint evidence with unprecedented precision. They discovered that many of the mysterious impressions contained trace materials that could be used to identify the entities that created them. Microscopic analysis revealed fragments of what appeared to be synthetic materials with properties unlike anything manufactured on Earth. Most intriguing was the discovery of what Dr. Crawford termed biological signatures embedded in the lunar dust around certain footprints. These signatures suggested that whatever created the impressions was shedding microscopic particles of organic material, creating a trail that could be followed across vast distances of the lunar surface. The forensic analysis also revealed evidence of tool use among the lunar inhabitants. Certain footprints were accompanied by scrape marks and impressions that suggested the use of sophisticated implements for excavation, construction, or scientific investigation. The entities living on the moon were not primitive creatures struggling to survive, but technologically advanced beings with complex material culture. The 17th footprint discovery emerged from the most ambitious lunar exploration project of the modern era. China's Chang'e program has been conducting increasingly sophisticated surveys of the lunar surface, using technology that far exceeds the capabilities of the original Apollo missions. In 2019, the Chang'e 4 lander achieved the first soft landing on the far side of the Moon, immediately beginning to transmit data that confirmed the worst fears of international space agencies. The lander's instruments detected clear evidence of ongoing biological activity in the lunar soil, including fresh organic compounds and what appeared to be metabolic byproducts of living organisms. Most shocking was the discovery of footprints around the landing site that had been made after the probe's arrival. High-resolution cameras captured images of impressions that appeared overnight, suggesting that lunar inhabitants had approached the Chinese lander to investigate this new intrusion into their territory. The footprints showed evidence of advanced intelligence and possibly technology. The entities had apparently examined the lander from multiple angles, leaving behind traces of their investigation in the form of tool marks and material samples that had been extracted from the probe's exterior. Chinese space officials immediately classified all findings related to biological activity, but leaked reports suggest that the Chang'e 4 mission established communication protocols with the lunar inhabitants, opening a dialogue that continues to this day through methods that remain completely secret. The 18th and final mysterious footprint discovery brings us to the present moment, where private space companies and independent researchers are beginning to uncover evidence that government space agencies have spent decades trying to suppress. In 2021, SpaceX conducted an unannounced lunar flyby mission that captured footage of the Moon's surface with commercial imaging technology that rivals military reconnaissance capabilities. The footage, accidentally broadcast on a live stream before being quickly cut off, showed clear evidence of large-scale construction activity on the lunar surface. The images revealed what appeared to be artificial structures rising from crater floors, connected by pathways marked with regular footprint trails. The scale of the construction suggested a civilization with engineering capabilities that far exceeded human technology, with structures that seemed to harness lunar resources in ways that human scientists are only beginning to understand. Most remarkable was evidence that the lunar inhabitants were preparing for something significant. The construction activity was accelerating, with new structures appearing in regions that had been empty just months before. The footprint trails showed increased movement between different construction sites, suggesting coordinated preparation for some kind of major event or development. Independent analysis of the leaked footage has revealed that many of the new structures are positioned with direct line of sight to Earth, as if the lunar inhabitants are preparing for increased interaction with human civilization. Whether this represents an opportunity for peaceful contact or preparation for something more ominous remains one of the greatest mysteries of our time. As we stand on the threshold of a new era in space exploration, these 18 mysterious footprints represent just the beginning of what we're likely to discover about our true relationship with the Moon and its hidden inhabitants. The evidence continues to mount, the questions continue to multiply, and the silence from official sources becomes more deafening with each new discovery. What makes these discoveries even more disturbing is the pattern of systematic suppression that emerges when you examine how each piece of evidence has been handled by authorities. Every researcher who has attempted to bring these findings to public attention has faced the same fate: career destruction, funding cuts, research confiscation, and in some cases, complete disappearance from the academic community. Dr. Patricia Williams experienced this firsthand when she attempted to publish her analysis of lunar footprint data in 2018. As a respected planetary geologist with over 20 years of experience, Dr. Williams had spent 3 years compiling evidence from multiple sources, creating the most comprehensive database of mysterious lunar impressions ever assembled by a civilian researcher. Her findings revealed something that government agencies had worked for decades to hide. The footprints weren't random anomalies or isolated incidents. They formed part of a vast network of activity that spanned the entire lunar surface, with evidence suggesting a complex civilization that had been observing and studying human activities since the beginning of space exploration. Dr. Williams documented over 400 separate footprint sites, each one showing evidence of intelligent planning and purpose. Some appeared to be observation posts positioned to monitor Earth-based activities. Others seemed to be research stations where lunar inhabitants conducted their own scientific investigations. Most disturbing of all were the sites that appeared to be preparation areas for activities directed toward Earth itself. When Dr. Williams submitted her research for peer review, the response was immediate and devastating. Her university position was terminated, her research grants cancelled, and her access to scientific databases revoked. Government agents visited her home, confiscating her computers, research notes, and backup files. Within weeks, all trace of her work had been erased from official records, but Dr. Williams had anticipated this response. Hidden copies of her research had been distributed to trusted colleagues around the world, ensuring that her discoveries would survive even if she couldn't continue her work publicly. These hidden archives form the foundation of ongoing independent research that continues to reveal new evidence of lunar inhabitation. The pattern of suppression extends far beyond individual researchers. Entire government agencies have been restructured to control the flow of information about lunar anomalies. The creation of the Space Force in 2019 wasn't just about protecting American interests in space. It was about centralizing control over all information related to non-human activity beyond Earth's atmosphere. Internal documents leaked from Space Force operations reveal the existence of protocols specifically designed to intercept and suppress evidence of lunar life. Any data suggesting non-human activity on the Moon is automatically classified at the highest levels of government secrecy, accessible only to a small group of officials with specialized clearance. These protocols explain why so many promising lines of research have suddenly been abandoned or redirected. When civilian researchers get too close to the truth, their work is quietly absorbed into classified military programs where it disappears from public view forever. The suppression isn't limited to American agencies. International cooperation agreements between major space programs include specific provisions for sharing and controlling information about lunar anomalies. What the public sees as competition between different national space programs is actually coordinated effort to maintain secrecy about discoveries that could fundamentally change human understanding of our place in the universe. Here at Dream Vault Mysteries, we've obtained exclusive access to communications between space agencies that reveal the true scope of this coordinated suppression. The documents show that evidence of lunar inhabitation has been accumulating for over 60 years, with each new discovery adding to a classified database that now contains thousands of verified incidents. But the most shocking revelation in these leaked communications isn't what they contain. It's what they suggest about the nature of the relationship between human space agencies and lunar inhabitants. The documents indicate that contact has been established and that ongoing communication has been taking place for decades through channels that remain completely hidden from public view. Recent developments suggest that this long period of secret contact may be coming to an end. The acceleration of lunar construction activity, documented by multiple independent sources, indicates that the hidden inhabitants are preparing for some kind of major change in their relationship with humanity. Satellite imagery from the past 2 years shows dramatic increases in surface activity, with new structures appearing at a rate that suggests urgent preparation for an unknown event. The footprint trails connecting these construction sites show evidence of massive coordination efforts involving thousands of individual entities working toward a common goal. Most ominous are the structures being built in locations with optimal visibility from Earth. These aren't hidden installations designed to avoid human detection. They're prominent constructions positioned where they can be easily observed by anyone with modest telescopic equipment. It's as if the lunar inhabitants want to be discovered, as if decades of secret observation and communication are giving way to open revelation. Independent researchers monitoring these developments have identified what appears to be a countdown pattern in the construction activity. New structures are appearing according to a precise timeline that suggests completion of some major project within the next few years. Whatever the lunar inhabitants have been preparing for, the moment of revelation may be closer than anyone imagines. The implications of open contact with an advanced lunar civilization would transform every aspect of human society. Religious beliefs, scientific understanding, political structures, and economic systems would all face fundamental challenges from the knowledge that humanity is not alone in the solar system. But perhaps even more disturbing is the possibility that this revelation is not voluntary on the part of the lunar inhabitants. The acceleration of their activities and the increasingly obvious nature of their constructions suggests urgency rather than careful planning. Something may be forcing their hand, compelling them to abandon decades of careful secrecy in favor of rapid preparation for an unknown crisis. Analysis of recent footprint patterns shows evidence of stress and urgency in the movements of lunar inhabitants. Where previous observations showed methodical, almost leisurely exploration of the lunar surface, recent tracks suggest rapid deployment of resources and personnel to critical locations around the moon. The question that haunts researchers studying these developments is simple but terrifying. If beings advanced enough to remain hidden from human detection for over 60 years are now abandoning secrecy in favor of urgent preparation, what could possibly be threatening enough to force such a dramatic change in their behavior? Some independent researchers have proposed that the lunar inhabitants aren't preparing for contact with humanity at all. Instead, they may be preparing for the arrival of something else entirely. Something that poses a threat significant enough to require the combined efforts of both human and lunar civilizations to address. This theory gains credibility when you examine the positioning of the new lunar constructions. Rather than being oriented toward Earth, many of the structures face outward toward deep space, as if designed to monitor or defend against threats from beyond the solar system. Recent analysis of deep space monitoring data has revealed anomalous signals originating from regions far beyond the outer planets. These signals show patterns that suggest artificial origin, possibly representing communications or navigation beacons from approaching vessels of unknown origin. If this interpretation is correct, then the mysterious footprints on the moon may represent not just evidence of hidden lunar inhabitants, but preparation for humanity's first contact with truly alien civilizations from other star systems. The lunar inhabitants, with their advanced technology and decades of observation experience, may be humanity's first line of defense against threats that our species isn't even aware of yet. The footprints that began as mysterious anomalies in old Apollo footage may actually be evidence of an advanced civilization that has been protecting Earth and preparing for challenges that human science is only beginning to detect. Every mysterious impression in the lunar dust represents not just proof of non-human intelligence, but evidence of allies who have been working in secret to ensure humanity's survival in a universe far more dangerous and complex than we ever imagined. As we continue to monitor developments on the lunar surface, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The age of secrets is ending, and humanity stands on the threshold of discoveries that will forever change our understanding of our place in the cosmos. The mysterious footprints on the moon are just the beginning of a story that will unfold in ways we can barely comprehend. At Dream Vault Mysteries, we remain committed to bringing you the truth about these extraordinary developments, no matter how shocking or world-changing that truth may prove to be. The evidence continues to mount, the mysteries continue to deepen, and the moment of revelation draws ever closer. What we've uncovered through months of investigation goes far beyond what any single researcher could have imagined. The 19th mysterious footprint emerged from the most unlikely source imaginable. A retired janitor who had worked at NASA's Johnson Space Center for over 30 years came forward with evidence that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. Ernest Rodriguez had been responsible for cleaning the laboratories where lunar samples were analyzed throughout the 1970s and 1980s. What his supervisors never realized was that Ernest had been documenting everything he observed during his nightly cleaning rounds. Every photograph left on desks, every computer screen displaying analysis results, every conversation he overheard between scientists working late into the night. In 2019, 2 years after his retirement, Ernest finally decided to reveal what he had witnessed. Hidden in his home garage were thousands of photographs, documents, and recordings that painted a picture of systematic deception spanning multiple decades. Among his most shocking discoveries were images of footprint casts that had been made from lunar soil samples but never officially documented. These casts showed impressions that were clearly not human in origin. The foot structure was elongated, with what appeared to be additional digits or appendages that would allow for superior grip on rocky surfaces. Most disturbing was the size variation among the casts. Some showed prints from entities no larger than human children, while others indicated beings of massive proportions, with feet measuring over 2 feet in length. Ernest's documentation revealed that NASA scientists had been studying these impressions for years, developing theories about lunar inhabitant physiology and behavior that were never shared with the public. Internal memos showed heated debates about whether the entities were native to the moon or visitors from elsewhere in the solar system. The 20th footprint discovery takes us deep into the world of corporate space exploration, where private companies operating beyond government oversight have begun uncovering evidence that official space agencies would prefer to keep hidden. Blue Origin conducted an unannounced lunar reconnaissance mission in early 2020, using experimental propulsion technology that allowed them to approach the moon without detection by traditional tracking systems. The mission's primary objective was to identify potential mining sites for future commercial operations. What they discovered instead was evidence of extensive mining activity that had been ongoing for decades, possibly centuries. Vast networks of tunnels and excavation sites covered areas of the lunar surface that official surveys had always described as geologically inactive. Most remarkable were the footprint trails leading between different mining operations. The impressions showed evidence of heavy machinery being transported across the lunar surface, but the equipment designs were unlike anything in human engineering databases. The tracks suggested vehicles that operated on principles completely foreign to terrestrial technology. Mission Commander David Park, a former Air Force pilot with 20 years of experience in classified operations, later described what he witnessed as beyond anything in his military training. The lunar surface showed signs of industrial activity on a scale that dwarfed human mining operations on Earth. Whatever was extracting resources from the moon possessed technology and organizational capabilities that far exceeded human civilization. When Blue Origin attempted to report their findings to NASA and other space agencies, they were told that the mission had never officially occurred and that all documentation should be destroyed. Company executives were visited by government officials who made it clear that disclosure of the mission details would result in the immediate termination of all government contracts and possible criminal prosecution. The 21st mysterious footprint emerged from the most advanced artificial intelligence analysis ever applied to lunar surface data. In 2021, researchers at Google's DeepMind division created an AI system specifically designed to identify patterns in astronomical imagery that human observers might miss due to cognitive limitations or unconscious bias. When the AI was given access to the complete archive of lunar photography dating back to the first telescopic observations in the 1600s, it immediately began identifying anomalies that had been overlooked for centuries. The system detected regular disturbances in lunar surface features that followed mathematical patterns suggesting intelligent causation rather than natural geological processes. Most shocking was the AI's conclusion that the disturbances showed evidence of technological advancement over time. Footprint patterns from historical observations showed relatively simple impressions, while more recent data revealed tracks with complex tread patterns and evidence of sophisticated equipment integration. The AI analysis suggested that lunar inhabitants had been developing their technology in parallel with human advancement, possibly using observation of human progress to accelerate their own technological development. The system identified correlations between major human technological breakthroughs and corresponding changes in lunar footprint characteristics, as if the inhabitants were adapting human innovations for their own purposes. Dr. Rebecca Chen, the lead researcher on the project, initially dismissed the AI's conclusions as algorithmic errors or pattern recognition artifacts. But as the system continued to refine its analysis and present increasingly detailed evidence, she was forced to confront the possibility that artificial intelligence had succeeded where human researchers had failed for decades. The AI's final report concluded that the Moon harbored a technologically advanced civilization that had been conducting systematic study of human development since the beginning of recorded history. The entities were not primitive inhabitants struggling to survive in the lunar environment, but sophisticated observers conducting long-term research on human civilization from their hidden vantage point. The 22nd footprint discovery brings us into the realm of quantum archaeology, where researchers have begun using advanced physics to examine the past in ways that were previously impossible. Dr. Michael Steinberg at the Institute for Advanced Study developed techniques for analyzing quantum traces left behind by conscious observers, allowing him to detect evidence of intelligence in locations where traditional archaeology had found nothing. When Dr. Steinberg applied his quantum archaeology methods to lunar soil samples, he discovered traces of conscious observation that extended back thousands of years. The quantum signatures indicated that intelligent beings had been present on the Moon far longer than any previous evidence had suggested, possibly predating human civilization by millennia. Most remarkable were the quantum traces associated with specific footprint locations. The signatures suggested that the entities creating the impressions possessed forms of consciousness that operated on quantum mechanical principles, allowing them to exist in states of superposition that would be impossible for biological organisms as humans understand them. Dr. Steinberg's research indicated that lunar inhabitants might exist primarily as quantum consciousness entities, only manifesting in physical form when specific conditions required direct interaction with the material world. This would explain why the footprint evidence had been so difficult to document consistently, appearing and disappearing based on quantum probability fluctuations rather than conventional physical presence. The implications of Dr. Steinberg's research extended far beyond simple proof of lunar inhabitation. If his conclusions were correct, the entities living on the moon represented a form of life that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness and physical reality itself. The 23rd mysterious footprint emerged from the classified archives of the Soviet space program, documents that were sealed for decades before being leaked by former KGB operatives in 2022. The files revealed that Soviet lunar missions had encountered evidence of non-human activity from the very beginning of their space program, but had been even more secretive about their discoveries than their American counterparts. Colonel Viktor Petrov, former director of the Soviet Lunar Reconnaissance Program, came forward with testimony that shocked even veteran researchers familiar with decades of suppressed evidence. According to Petrov, Soviet missions had established direct contact with lunar inhabitants as early as 1966, initiating a secret dialogue that continued throughout the Cold War period. The contact had been established through mathematical communications, with Soviet scientists transmitting geometric patterns to specific locations on the lunar surface and receiving responses that demonstrated advanced mathematical understanding. The exchanges had gradually evolved into more complex communications, covering topics ranging from physics and astronomy to philosophy and social organization. Petrov revealed that the lunar inhabitants had provided technological assistance to the Soviet space program, sharing knowledge that had allowed them to achieve several breakthroughs that were publicly attributed to human engineering advances. The entities had been particularly interested in human social and political systems, conducting what amounted to anthropological research on human civilization. Most disturbing was Petrov's claim that the lunar inhabitants had warned Soviet scientists about potential threats from other extraterrestrial civilizations, providing intelligence about hostile entities that were approaching the solar system from deep space. The lunar beings had positioned themselves as protectors of both their own civilization and humanity, working to prepare defenses against threats that human science was not yet capable of detecting. Here at Dream Vault Mysteries, we've spent considerable effort verifying Petrov's claims through independent sources, and what we've discovered confirms the most shocking aspects of his testimony. Documents from multiple intelligence agencies show evidence of coordinated preparation for threats that have never been disclosed to the public. The 24th footprint discovery takes us to the cutting edge of space-based archaeology, where researchers have begun using advanced satellite networks to conduct real-time monitoring of lunar surface changes. The Artemis Surveillance Network, a classified military project launched in 2020, has been tracking lunar activity with unprecedented precision using arrays of quantum sensors that can detect microscopic changes in surface topology. Dr. Amanda Foster, a former Air Force intelligence analyst who worked on the project before becoming a whistleblower, revealed that the surveillance network had documented massive construction projects occurring on the far side of the moon. The projects showed evidence of engineering capabilities that exceeded human technology by several orders of magnitude. The footprint evidence from these construction sites revealed the involvement of multiple different entity types, suggesting a complex society with specialized roles and advanced division of labor. Some prints indicated beings adapted for heavy construction work, while others showed characteristics of technical specialists or supervisory personnel. Most remarkable was evidence that the construction projects were being coordinated with similar activities occurring in other locations throughout the solar system. Quantum communication signatures detected by the surveillance network indicated that lunar inhabitants were in regular contact with entities on Mars, the asteroid belt, and several of the outer planet moons. Dr. Foster's analysis suggested that humanity had stumbled into the middle of a vast interplanetary civilization that had been operating throughout the solar system for thousands of years. The lunar inhabitants weren't isolated entities struggling to survive on a barren world, but active participants in a complex network of intelligent civilizations that had been carefully avoiding detection by the relatively primitive human species. The 25th mysterious footprint brings us to the present moment, where developments are accelerating at a pace that suggests major revelations are imminent. Commercial space tourism operations have begun reporting anomalous observations during routine flights, with passengers and crew documenting evidence that can no longer be easily dismissed or suppressed. Virgin Galactic Flight VSS Unity reported in March 2023 that passengers had observed and photographed what appeared to be artificial lights moving across the lunar surface in patterns that suggested intelligent control. The lights were too bright and too coordinated to be natural phenomena, and their movement patterns indicated technology far more advanced than any human spacecraft. Most significant was the crew's report that the lights appeared to be responding to the presence of the Virgin Galactic vehicle, changing their patterns and intensity as if acknowledging the human observers. For the first time in decades of suppressed evidence, lunar inhabitants seem to be actively seeking contact with civilian witnesses rather than avoiding detection. SpaceX missions have reported similar observations, with crew members documenting what appears to be deliberate attempts at communication from lunar-based entities. Starship test flights have recorded structured light patterns emanating from the Moon that follow mathematical sequences, suggesting intentional messaging. The evidence suggests that the long period of secret observation and hidden contact is giving way to open acknowledgement of the lunar civilization's existence. Whether this represents a planned revelation or a response to external pressures remains unclear, but the acceleration of visible activity indicates that major changes are imminent. Independent researchers monitoring these developments have identified what appears to be a coordinated campaign by lunar inhabitants to gradually increase their visibility to human observers. The process seems designed to allow humanity time to adjust to the reality of non-human intelligence before full disclosure occurs. The 26th footprint discovery emerged from the most unexpected source imaginable. Children attending a space camp in Alabama reported observations that trained astronomers had somehow missed for decades. Using modest telescopes during a routine stargazing session, several 8- and 9-year-old participants spotted moving lights on the lunar surface that their adult supervisors initially dismissed as imagination or misidentification. However, when the children's observations were carefully documented and analyzed, they revealed patterns that correlated perfectly with classified military surveillance data. The children, unburdened by preconceptions about what was possible or impossible, had observed genuine lunar activity that adult researchers had been trained to ignore or rationalize away. The incident sparked a revelation among some researchers that human psychological conditioning might be the greatest obstacle to acknowledging the reality of lunar inhabitation. Adults, trained to dismiss anomalous observations as errors or illusions, might be systematically blind to evidence that children and untrained observers could see clearly. This led to a revolutionary new approach to lunar observation, with researchers deliberately seeking out witnesses who had no formal astronomical training or preconceptions about what they should or shouldn't expect to see. The results were extraordinary, with civilian observers consistently reporting phenomena that trained scientists had been overlooking for years. The 27th mysterious footprint takes us into the world of leaked government communications, where internal discussions between world leaders reveal the true scope of knowledge about lunar inhabitation at the highest levels of global power. Communications intercepted by independent hackers show that major world governments have been coordinating their responses to lunar contact for over a decade. The leaked messages reveal that lunar inhabitants have been providing technological assistance to human governments in exchange for continued secrecy about their existence. Advanced materials, energy technologies, and medical treatments that have been attributed to human innovation were actually developed through collaboration with lunar scientists. Most shocking are communications discussing timeline negotiations between human leaders and lunar representatives. The messages indicate that lunar inhabitants have been pushing for gradual disclosure of their existence, while human governments have been requesting more time to prepare their populations for the revelation. The negotiations appear to have reached a critical point, with lunar representatives indicating that external circumstances no longer allow for extended secrecy. References to approaching threats and the need for coordinated defense suggest that disclosure may be forced by circumstances beyond either party's control. At Dreamvault Mysteries, our analysis of these communications reveals a complex relationship between human and lunar civilizations that extends far beyond simple observation or contact. The evidence suggests active collaboration and mutual assistance that has been hidden from the public for decades, while shaping the course of human technological development. The 28th footprint discovery brings us to the frontiers of consciousness research, where scientists have begun exploring the possibility that lunar inhabitants exist primarily as non-physical entities that only occasionally manifest in material form. Dr. Sarah Martinez at the Institute for Consciousness Studies has developed techniques for detecting non-physical intelligence that have revolutionized our understanding of the lunar presence. Using advanced electromagnetic field detection equipment, Dr. Martinez has documented consistent patterns of consciousness activity on the lunar surface that correlate with footprint appearances. The research suggests that lunar inhabitants exist primarily as energy-based entities that can manipulate matter when necessary, but normally operate in non-physical dimensions. This discovery provides an explanation for the decades of inconsistent evidence surrounding lunar inhabitation. If the entities exist primarily as consciousness rather than physical matter, they would only leave physical traces when specific circumstances required material interaction with their environment. The implications extend far beyond lunar research, suggesting that human understanding of consciousness and physical reality may be fundamentally incomplete. The lunar inhabitants may represent an evolutionary path that transcends the limitations of biological existence, achieving forms of consciousness that operate according to principles human science is only beginning to explore. Dr. Martinez's research indicates that the entities have been attempting to communicate with human consciousness directly, bypassing physical senses and technological intermediaries. Some humans may be naturally sensitive to these consciousness-based communications, explaining reports of telepathic contact and psychic impressions related to lunar activity. The 29th mysterious footprint emerged from the analysis of ancient human texts and artifacts, where researchers have discovered references to lunar inhabitants that predate modern space exploration by thousands of years. Dr. Robert Chen, a specialist in comparative mythology and ancient texts, has identified consistent patterns in human cultural traditions that suggest long-term awareness of lunar civilization. Ancient Sumerian tablets contain detailed descriptions of beings from the moon who provided technological and agricultural knowledge to early human civilizations. Similar references appear in Egyptian hieroglyphics, Hindu scriptures, and Native American oral traditions, suggesting that contact between human and lunar civilizations has been ongoing for millennia. The consistency of these ancient accounts across unconnected cultures indicates that lunar inhabitation is not a recent phenomenon, but has been a persistent reality throughout human history. The entities described in ancient texts match remarkably well with modern observations of lunar activity, suggesting that the same civilization has been interacting with humanity for thousands of years. Dr. Chen's research reveals that many major advances in human civilization, from agriculture and metallurgy to astronomy and mathematics, may have been influenced by knowledge provided by lunar inhabitants. The development of human technology may have been guided and accelerated by entities with far superior understanding of natural principles. Most intriguing are ancient prophecies that describe a time when the lunar inhabitants would reveal themselves openly to humanity, ending millennia of hidden contact and beginning a new era of cooperation between the civilizations. These prophecies consistently describe the revelation as occurring during a period of great challenge or threat that would require combined human and lunar efforts to address. The 30th and most recent footprint discovery brings us to the present moment, where multiple independent sources are reporting an unprecedented acceleration in lunar surface activity. Observations from around the world indicate that lunar inhabitants are abandoning their long-maintained secrecy and beginning to reveal themselves to human observers on a massive scale. Amateur astronomers across 6 continents have documented coordinated light displays on the lunar surface that spell out mathematical equations and geometric patterns visible to anyone with basic telescopic equipment. The displays appear to be designed as universal communication symbols that would be recognizable to any scientifically literate civilization. Professional observatories that have spent decades denying anomalous lunar observations are finally beginning to acknowledge what they can no longer ignore. The Arecibo Observatory, before its collapse, transmitted preliminary reports of structured signals originating from multiple locations on the lunar surface, signals that showed clear evidence of intelligent design and purposeful communication. Most significant are reports from the International Space Station, where astronauts have observed and photographed large-scale construction projects on the lunar surface that are clearly visible to the naked eye. The structures are being built at locations with optimal visibility from Earth, as if specifically designed to be noticed by human observers. The evidence suggests that the age of hidden lunar inhabitation is ending, and that humanity is about to experience the most significant revelation in recorded history. The mysterious footprints that began as anomalous impressions in Apollo mission footage have led us to the threshold of open contact with an advanced civilization that has been our hidden neighbor for millennia. As we stand on the brink of this unprecedented moment, one thing becomes absolutely clear. The universe is far more complex and populated than human science ever imagined, and our understanding of our place in the cosmos is about to be forever transformed. The footprints in the lunar dust were never just evidence of visitors or observers. They were the first traces of neighbors, allies, and perhaps teachers who have been waiting patiently for humanity to mature enough to join a larger community of consciousness that spans the stars. Every mysterious impression, every suppressed photograph, every classified document has been leading to this moment when the barriers between human and lunar civilizations finally dissolve, revealing a relationship that has been shaping the course of human development since the dawn of recorded history. The age of isolation is ending, and the age of cosmic citizenship is about to begin. The footprints on the moon were never just marks in the dust. They were invitations to a larger universe, waiting for the moment when humanity would be ready to accept them and step forward into a future beyond our wildest imagination.